The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. Sam, how's it going?
I'm feeling good, man. I am back in my home, not my hometown now. I guess I was in my hometown for Thanksgiving. But yeah, made the road trip a couple of times over the past few days, feeling refreshed, feeling thankful and grateful, I guess is the better word for that, both for personal stuff, but also for the Phoenix Suns, who had a pretty damn good week.
Won 4 in a row. Knicks, Lakers, Pistons, Jazz, all wins this week. None of those teams are, the Jazz have been good, I guess. None of those teams are overly impressive to beat, but the Suns are winning the games that they're supposed to win.
Who is an impressive team to beat right now?
That's part of the problem, isn't it? Yeah, that's what we're going to have to talk about. But they still came through and won every one. I finally went to a game, too. I went to the Pistons game. And
yeah, dude.
They were very good.
Wait, let's talk about that for the people who don't follow you on social media. Even for the people, I think, who don't follow you on Twitter, there is a good chance that a lot of people logging into, their Instagram accounts or otherwise on Twitter or maybe on Facebook saw a video that you took at that Suns game, which last I checked, of in case you haven't seen it, of Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, and I believe the third, Dwayne Washington Jr., and I believe even Campaign at the end there, all dancing to Playboy Cardi Nevada, which has been like the song that the Suns have used in their playlist for a year plus now. Dancing with a Kid pregame. Yeah. And it was a really, really wonderful video. Last I checked, dude, like millions of people have seen that.
Yeah,
and that was you.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. They watched it, over 1 million plays on Twitter, but also ESPN reposted it on Instagram and I think TikTok too. Bleacher Report reposted the video. Yeah, it's cool because it was just a moment that I saw of Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton in particular, and then Dwayne Washington Jr. Just going over there and dancing with a kid. DeAndre Ayton, and this is a song, like you said, that they have danced to before. There was videos that went viral of them dancing to it last year, but this kid that was sitting courtside clearly knew that, and as soon as the song started playing, he took it upon himself to get the attention of DeAndre Ayton and Mikal Bridges, and then they just kind of danced with him, and that kid was very excited. It was pretty cool to see, and pretty funny that that just so happened to be the first thing I saw when I sat down after getting to the arena, and I just had a good vantage point of it. But yeah, and then I got to see the Suns win too, which was another great game. I think, we saw DeAndre Ayton's probably his wake-up game after the Lakers game where Patrick Beverley shoved him over, the best game he had played up to that point of the season, followed it up with another probably better game. In the Jazz, back-to-back games for the Suns, which they won. Both the Suns have been pretty good in back-to-backs throughout the last few years, and they won both of those games, home games. They've played a lot. I feel like they've played a lot of home games this year, right? I don't actually know the total amount of games they played.
I know for a fact how many they've played because there was a Nuggets fan.
12.
Yes, there was a Nuggets fan who was mad in my replies earlier today saying, you guys don't deserve to be the 1 seed. You have played too many home games. So 12 so far. By the way, before anyone gets me, I have to correct myself. I think I said Playboy Cardi. Jesus Christ. NBA Youngboy. NBA Youngboy. That's who Nevada is by. Anyway, sorry. I had to correct myself.
I was going to let it slide and just let people attack you later.
I know people were going to attack me later, and it's like my brain. I drove 6 hours today. My brain's barely working anymore. Cut me some slack. Anyway,
I was gonna let him go at you and pretend like I didn't even notice.
Fuck off.
But DeAndre, let's talk about DeAndre, and I think this is a good time to talk about him because he's been on our minds. I think you and I talked about him. I think 2 weeks ago about how all of his averages are down basically, and in not great ways. I think outside of offensive rebounding, where he's having a really great season so far, which I think we could talk about later as well. But I think we finally saw him have great games. I don't think he's had a great game yet until that Pistons game. He's had games where he rebounded well. He's had games where he scored relatively well, but all of it sort of added up to a mediocre start for DeAndre Ayton. I mean, to be honest, at times, a bad start for DeAndre Ayton. And then we see him come into that Detroit game, and he played really well, and then followed it up with the Jazz game, like I said. What did you think about DeAndre Ayton in those two games?
Absolutely exceptional 2 games for DeAndre Ayton. And just more generally, I've got the stats here. In his last 5 games now, he's averaging 20 points, 14 rebounds, and 3.5 assists per game on 66% field goal shooting. He racked up, I think, 16 free throw attempts. I think that's the exact number. I don't have the box score, the game log in front of me, but I think it's 16 free throw attempts between the last 2 games, which for him is great. For any center, honestly, that's pretty great. So, yeah, Ayton has been absolutely exceptional, and I'm glad we're revisiting the conversation because I think, as you said, the last time we had a DeAndre Ayton discussion was 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if, I don't want to misconstrue kind of what your thoughts were at the time, but I feel like we were more or less on the same page of, the general tone of that conversation felt to me not panicked, but concerned. Yeah. For both of us. I mean, I was definitely at a point where I was officially concerned about Ayton's effort level at the time, beyond what obviously he had been returning, from an ankle injury, and he had missed a couple of games at the beginning of the season. But for me, it felt like it was more than that. And at the time when we had that conversation, really, he was averaging 7 rebounds per game. Now he's I think he has double figures in 6 of the past 7 games. And like I just said, he's averaging 14 over the past 5. But he's really come a really long way, I think, in the past couple of weeks. From the entire reason we had that first discussion was because it would be one thing if Ayton hadn't, had kind of come out of the gate this season and not obviously taken a step forward. The reason we were so concerned is because a lot of the stuff that he had slowly come to master over his first 4 seasons in the NBA, the screen setting, the rebounding, the drop defense, the touch,
floater, the hook shot.
It felt like a lot of the things that we started to take for granted that he was just always elite at, even those were areas of his game that were slipping, and a lot of it felt effort-based. And credit to him. Again, the past 2 games have been absolutely exceptional from him, and I don't know. I just, I hope it's not reasonable to expect the guy to average 30 and 20. That's never been the benchmark. That's not what we're going for. We've always said that it's also possible for Ayton to have great games where he, scores 14, 15 points. So I don't want to make it seem like it's just about points, but his physicality, the way that he's imposed himself in the past couple of games, it's obvious that he's taken a step up, and I just hope he can challenge himself and other people can challenge him to maintain that level, because that's really what the Suns need. They really need him to play like kind of that number 2 best player on the team in order to go all the way.
Yeah, and I think interesting about that is the Suns didn't change much about how they played in that time, right? It was about him and his mindset and how he brought it. I think you mentioned the word physicality. Devin Booker said it after the 29 and 21 game, which was one of the better games of his career in the regular season, I would say, for DeAndre Ayton. He said it's not even about the 29 and 21, it's about the physicality. He specifically mentioned that. Devin Booker, of course, a true basketball aficionado, not looking at box scores as we talk about it. He's not a box score watcher. He's watching him play, and he's saying it about DeAndre Ayton. It's not really about the box score for DeAndre Ayton, and I think it's true for us as well. We've talked about that for years, and to see him get out there and be physical, on the boards, I think that's probably one of the more important things is on the rebounds. But also, going to the rim with intention, dunks. Look, I'm back in on dunks. I said it, I think, a year and a half ago. I'm back in on dunks. I used to say it didn't matter, but I think it does matter, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in just a second. But going to the rim with intention, especially in particular for him, where that sort of non-restricted area paint section where he dominated last year as far as efficiency, he's not right now, right? So he needs to go to the rim to actually get those points. That floater, not looking so hot for him so far this year. And, last season he was pretty incredible from that floater range. And, so far this season, we're basically just about a quarter of the way through the season. It's not been there for him. And that's a pretty big sample size as far as seasons go. And it's, we're going to find out as the season progresses whether or not last season was unique in that type of efficiency from that range, or if it's something that he can build on going forward. But so far, the results are not great there. So him getting to the rim, beyond that, stepping up closer to the rim, trying to attack, I think it's been important for him to do that as well.
Yeah, I think it's an important point about the dunks that, like, obviously it can kind of turn into an eye roll inducing conversation where it's just like, it's in some contexts it's unreasonable. And also, I think we've said in the past, in some contexts, it doesn't really matter. The putback context, like if DeAndre Ayton is just getting an offensive rebound, does he need to go up strong with two hands and tear the rim down like he's Shaquille O'Neal, like circa 1992, or can he just lay it up? I think in a lot of situations it's fine to just lay it up and it doesn't really affect the percentage all that much. Where the dunks are becoming important, and I think you were just hitting on this, is right outside of that restricted area, because in a lot of these particular pick and roll situations, he's catching the ball 5 or 6 feet out, maybe up to 8 to 10 feet out even, and just going up kind of lightly with some weak shit isn't always going to work. And actually, like, I think what we've seen naturally a ton of people on Suns Twitter say over the past couple of games, because we've seen several dunks between these past 2 games, is that a lot of these kind of one-handed tomahawk off of 2 feet dunks that we've seen from DeAndre Ayton recently feel Amari-esque. And I think it's completely bang on. Like, it felt Amari-esque to me too, because when you go back and look at Amari, like, the thing about Amari as an athlete, he was one of the most explosive athletes we've ever seen in terms of his raw vertical. He wasn't ever the most graceful or flexible.
No,
like,
it was a power game.
It was a power game. It was entirely a power game. And actually, like, Amari is one of the more stiff, like, athletes in terms of mobility. I think that.
Well, we saw that on the defensive end. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a huge reason why he was never able to master the defensive end in the first place. But just to go at guys from 6 to 8 feet out and attack forcefully on offense, he was able to do that through pure physicality and pure explosion. And I think Ayton is, look, they're different athletes in a lot of ways. But I do think Ayton is similar in the sense that, he is a little bit stiff. You can't necessarily expect him to just leap off of 1 foot from anywhere and like kind of contort his body to finish through contact no matter what. Like, I don't think he's just going to start racking up posters left and right. But if he gets set and if he catches in the right spot, up to a dribble away, sometimes not even a dribble away, and he has the opportunity to elevate off of 2 feet.
Yeah.
It's good to see him have some more confidence to kind of, rather than just finish off with 2 hands, to go for the one-handed tomahawk. He's going to start catching some bodies if he keeps approaching the game that way.
Okay, just to be clear on that, the second step of that is still going up when defenders are out of position, not necessarily just not in his way at all. Because the dunks we've seen have been great, but they have been when he has just a sliver of space to get to the rim where nobody's going to touch him. It's a whole different game to start doing it when they are in front of you. They're just not in the position to properly defend you, right? You're going up assuming you're going to be fouled. And that is another step for him, which you can't just assume is going to happen. We've seen him too many times to just assume that's the next step naturally for him. He has to start doing that for us to believe he's going to be capable of doing that. So I want to make sure that we have the right perspective on this conversation when talking about him, because it's easy to be too far one way or too far the other way when talking about him. But just to add to what you're saying, I bet you could guess which 2 games were the most dunks he's had this season. The last 2 games. It was the Pistons and it was the Jazz. It's just not a coincidence. And look, he had 4 dunks in the Jazz game, arguably his best game of the season. I did some work. Was
there a single? And I'm just going off memory here. I don't think a single one was an alley-oop. I think they were all catch and traffic and finish.
All assisted, and I think that's, though, right? All assisted.
Sure. And I actually have a point I want to make about that in a minute too. But just the fact that he's catching in traffic and finishing is distinctly different from the easy diet. I don't want to say easy. It's never easy to catch a lob, but it's a different type of offensive profile to maybe what we've seen.
He's doing more. Right. His role in that is a little bit more when the ball's in his hands. He's had 29 games where he dunks 4 times or more in his career. He averages in those games 22.1 points per game when he dunks 4 or more times. He dunked 4 times in the Jazz game. not, I don't know that this is a coincidence with DeAndre Ayton. I'd like to pretend that it is sometimes. But there's a lot of those games. I had to do this manually, right? So I brought up every single time he's dunked 4 times, and I had to bring up the box score for all 29 of those games. I logged all of the points manually, and then I figured out the averages on my own. But as I was going through that, you're just going through these games, and you're like, okay, 29, okay, 25, okay, 25, okay, 24. And then, okay, 14, oh, but that's his rookie year. Okay, 16, oh, but that's his rookie year. You're just sort of seeing this trend within games that he dunks. The physicality, and when he brings that physicality, I think makes a pretty big difference for him. And even to add to that, when he's scored 25 or more, he's averaging 13.4 rebounds. And his career average is 10.5, right? It's with him, when things are locked in, when the little things are locked in, the scoring just sort of comes naturally, right? When he's attacking the rim on those dunks, there is an intention to that. It's not a coincidence that he's attacking the rim on those dunks. And all of those things together, I think, line up for him to have a great game. And this is why I think it's important to talk about with the right perspective with him, because 25 points, 2 games in a row, he's done that a few times in his career. Mm-hmm. I looked it up.
Yeah.
How many games do you think he's had 25 points? How many times in his career do you think he's had 25 points 3 games in a row?
I'm going to guess 0.
0. Yeah, that's exactly right.
But it's like, because and it's not that we're trying to take anything away from him here, right? It's just kind of like trying to encourage him to maintain the level, because we've had the conversation every year where there are 2 good Ayton games in a row, and we kind of come on the podcast and we say, look how awesome he's been. But
today,
we don't want it. We don't want that level. We don't want that level to disappear again.
Today, Zubats had a 29-point.
All right,
or was it 21? No, 31 and 29 rebound.
He had
31.29 rebound game. You can't get too excited about individual games.
Let's not be. He's not Zubats.
It was
an underrated
obviously
player,
not. He's obviously a lot. I actually really like Zubats a lot, but it was just another reminder of, okay, yeah, that's what Zubats did in this one game, which is incredible. And I'm not going to say anything other than that, because I looked it up. The last time somebody met those 2 stats, it's only happened twice in the last 40 years. By Dwight Howard and Kevin Love. An amazing game by Zubats.
Wait. Who's matched what? 31 and 29?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Drummond never had I feel like he got close once or twice.
No.
Anyway.
I'm sure he's had multiple 2020 games, but the 31 points, I think, is a limiting factor there, where both Dwight Howard and Kevin Love did. The last time before that was 1982. So a long time ago.
You know what's crazy? I bet Wilt did that 80 times at least.
Yeah, probably. Moses Malone was up there a lot too. But anyway, when talking about DeAndre Ayton, I think it's really important to say he's doing really great in these games. But I also think it's really important to also remember that for DeAndre Ayton to continue to be great, he has to continue to be great. It's not just a given. Because he can do this is not a reason to praise him. The reason to praise him is when he does do it. And the more consistency that he does it with, the better. It's really important. 25 points, 2 games in a row. Amazing. 7 or 8 times he's probably done it in his career. But it'd be nice to see him do it 3 times in a row. We're doing this next game on playback, for example. It'd be nice for us to do that on playback and talk about him doing it for the first time in his career 3 games in a row. That would be a really great thing for him. And I'm not saying that the points are all that matters, right? It's the physicality. It's everything else coming time and time again. It's hard to do that a lot.
I want to see a dunk on Sabonis' face in traffic. Monday night. If you want to talk about things that would be poetic. Have they played
since those trade rumors? I don't know if they had.
I'm not sure. I mean, we play the Kings 4 times a year, but Sabonis hasn't been on the Kings
he was
for
there
that
after
long.
The trade deadline, yeah.
He was there after the trade deadline, so we must have. I just don't remember those games in particular.
That's a good point. I did look up some other 25 points or more stats just out of curiosity. The 13.4 rebounds, I think, is an important stat for him, because I think things click, like I said, when he has intention, when he has focus. It shows in not just the scoring. It shows everywhere. That's 3 rebounds over his career average. It's pretty significant. This one's kind of odd. When he scores 25 points or more, 16 and 14, the Suns are. I thought that would be a better record. It felt like one of those things where, well, if Ayton's scoring, we must be winning, because that's just, that's like extra when he's getting 25 or more, but it didn't really show that way. And you keep in mind the Suns were not a great team the first 2 years of his career. So I'm sure in the last few years, that's probably dramatically different.
Yeah, definitely. Like almost any of those games from his rookie season would have been L's, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's like with Booker too. Like if you look at those stats with Booker, it's
right.
not going to look as great with him as well. But it's just it's nice when DeAndre Ayton has a great game like this. It's also can be a little frustrating in some other respects because you want to see it more often from him. And I do think it is fair this is what you want from a max player. You know, like this was the exact conversation people had before he was signed to a max contract. The ability to do this kind of thing, not every game, but you know, consistently enough that he's one of the most important parts of the team offensively, as far as even creating for himself. That's kind of what you want to see. And for him to do it regularly, I think would be the most ideal situation for the Suns. I mean, it's really the only way I think the Suns could be like a legitimate contender. I mean, potentially for years to come, if it's something that he can do on a regular basis. And for the amount he's getting paid, that's kind of what you want to see.
Well, like if him and Mikal ascended both to top 30 player status, then, you know, without either of them becoming like MVP level or anything, then yeah, you could probably get there too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's asking for a lot. Can I give a shout out to a different player still in the context of the Ayton discussion? I want to talk about Cam Payne as a player who I think has really learned to play with DeAndre Ayton. Kind of more generally over the past couple of years, but it's just especially it feels like it in the most recent stretch, and it's really nice to see. I don't know if you remember, we had a conversation very long ago, but I remember a couple of years ago, I looked up this stat, which really surprised me at the time.
Yep,
and
I know what you're talking about.
You know exactly what I'm talking about because I think I've probably brought it up multiple times now, but it's a manual stat. They don't track it per se on the NBA's website. I just had to calculate it myself, but I'm calling it like the average number of minutes, this is a mouthful, sorry. The average number of minutes shared between two players on the court per assist, which means essentially if you've got a pairing of Cam Payne and DeAndre Ayton, which is the example I'm going to use here, how many minutes can you expect those two guys to be on the floor together before you see an assist from Cam Payne to DeAndre Ayton? And to give you a baseline example, first of all, like Chris Paul, master, you know, point guard, whatever, has, I would say at least, like more or less mastered the art of the pick and roll with DeAndre Ayton and is, you know, handling it about as efficiently as you could expect. So just to give a baseline stat, Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, that number is about 9.5 minutes. Roughly every 9.5 minutes that Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton share the floor together, you can expect one assist going directly from Chris Paul to DeAndre Ayton. Obviously, there aren't very many going the opposite direction from Ayton to Chris Paul. So 9.5 minutes, that's kind of like the gold standard. That's what we're dealing with this year. 2 years ago, in the final season, back when Cam Payne was, for the most part, you know, a bench player, only I'm not even sure if he started a single game that year.
A good bench player. There you go.
A good bench player, but didn't have as much opportunity to play with DeAndre Ayton. Even in the playoffs, we I think, saw the effects of that. Throughout that entire regular season, he played 350 minutes sharing the court with DeAndre Ayton and turned that into only 10 assists, which, using our stat, it was 9.5 minutes for Chris Paul. It was 35 minutes for Cam Payne and DeAndre Ayton 2 years ago. That's the stat that you remembered. A guy who had completely not figured out, I think, at the time, how to play with DA, understanding that Chris was the guy who wanted to snake the pick and roll and kind of fade out into space and take the mid-range. And as a result, Ayton was rolling hard to the basket because he wanted to collect that pocket pass or that alley-oop. Cam Payne, an entirely different archetype, a player who wants to use his speed to get ahead. The two just hadn't figured it out. I think we saw a lot of improvement last year, and the stats reflect that. And this year, even more improvement, and that number now is down to 14 minutes this season. The two have shared the floor for 281 minutes total. Cam Payne has converted that into 20 assists, so an average of 14 minutes. Every 14 minutes that Cam Payne and DeAndre Ayton share the floor, we see one assist going from Payne to Ayton. And for Ayton, I think it's all about the trailing, like learning to trail the pick and roll, allow Payne to get the early penetration. Maybe the Suns are going to empty out the corner like they like doing to make, you know, Cam Payne's job even easier. But then Ayton is getting much, much better about trailing those actions and collecting the pass. And again, just to bring it all home, what we've been saying in this entire conversation today on the podcast, like if he's going to keep getting those passes, catching 8 or 10 feet out, and he's going to approach each rep with the same physicality and the same forcefulness, he's going to keep getting those assists for campaign. So I just want to give them a shout out because I think the chemistry between those two has really improved versus what I used to notice between the two of them.
I also think that first of all, I'll say two things. I think DeAndre Ayton has done a good job catching passes a little below his waist recently, and I don't know if there's something that's happened with the way that he's been coached or some sort of mindset shift where somebody said, hey, try to be more ready for the pass, or I don't know what it is, or for them to have better chemistry for that. But he's done a good job, and that works. But also on the other side of that, Chris Paul is such a master at finding angles on assists in ways that nobody else on the Suns can do. So even though that number for campaign is such a large number, even in comparison to Chris Paul's, I think that what the Suns have done recently is just reverse the ball a little bit more to try to get it to DeAndre Ayton. So when DeAndre Ayton has a mismatch, instead of immediately making the point guard try to pass the ball to him, they're reversing the ball to the other side of the court, giving it to a player that's taller, and that player is now lobbing it into DeAndre Ayton. And DeAndre Ayton, to his credit, when he's catching it in those short post rolls, he's no longer turning. I'm not going to say he's no longer doing this. For 2 games, he's not turning those shots into further away shots, which is something that he tends to do, right? He catches it in the post, and then he shoots a shot further away from that.
He's still doing the turnaround jumpers a decent amount, but he's making them too, so I'm not going to complain too much about it.
Yes, he is doing that, but there have been more instances of him trying to use physicality in the post to get closer to the rim, which are all things I think Suns fans were asking. There was a moment where he did it to Lauri Markkanen. He put his shoulder down into him, right? Got into the paint and shot a really short layup, essentially, right? He turned a post up into a layup. And, more often for him to do that would be great for the Suns.
There was another play. Was it on Markkanen or was it on Kelly Olynyk where he gave him a little elbow and whichever player it was kind of started feeling his shoulder like, holy shit.
Yeah, I think that was Kelly, yeah.
Realizing the effects of what this guy could do to them, at full force,
make him feel you. That's really what it is. Play with force. You want them to be sore after you play against DeAndre Ayton. That's the goal. And you fading away from that contact over and over, creating a post shot and then making it a further away shot, it's just not going to work as far as that goes. That physicality and that pain that Kelly Olynyk feels, it affects the rest of the team as well, because maybe he's not as focused or not as good on that jump shot.
One last thing about campaign, by the way. How do we feel about the Turbo nickname that they're trying to co-sign on the broadcast?
It really highlights how slow Chris Paul is, I think. But I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't
mind it. I guess it's difficult.
It's new, right?
He's not allowed to be CP. That's always kind of been the issue with Cam. So I think they've had to try and find a nickname for him. But Turbo is new. I mean, look, it works. It describes his game.
He's fast.
He is fast. And
Campaign is such a great name. And his name is Cameron Payne. Doesn't that sound weird?
No one says that.
It's Cameron Payne. What if we just started calling him Cameron Payne on the podcast only?
I don't like that.
People would be like, who are they talking about? And Cameron Johnson.
Well, sometimes actually you can tell a person who hasn't watched the Suns in 3 years because if they say Cameron Payne. Because it's if you watch the broadcast, no one says Cameron Payne. But if you see someone, I don't know, making a video or just talking on Twitter or whatever about the team and they say Cameron Payne, then I don't know, just no one calls him that. Not that I have noticed anyway. Maybe his parents do.
It's at least.
Are you Michael to your parents?
I am. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You're Michael to your parents?
Not just my parents, actually. Basically, everyone in my immediate family and my slightly extended family, I am Michael to. And then outside of that, I'm just Mike to everyone else. So yeah. Which is actually kind of nice to have a different name for your family. So when someone calls your name, you know who it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice. Which I guess some people have with nicknames the other way around. Their family calls them a nickname. Everyone else calls them their real name, but it's a little different for me. Or I should say Devin Booker tweeted about being hungover on Thanksgiving and then played 2 kind of bad games. It's at least a little bit funny, right?
Also, have we talked about on the pod yet?
He deleted the tweet too, by the way.
Of course he did, because he always comes to his senses. Have we talked about on the pod yet? Isn't it over between him and Kendall?
That's right. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And then he goes out and gets drunk.
Are we really going to do this? Do we need to stretch out the episode sufficient? Like, do we need to spend the next 10 minutes talking about them?
I don't know. Do you have a thought on that? I really don't have any other thought other than I feel kind of bad because
I feel kind of bad because breakups are hard, and they were actually together for
right?
for 2 years. So I don't want to joke about it too hard. I don't know. Like, do we? As I proceed to make a joke about it, how does this impact Devin Booker's legacy? No, it's like, how does it affect him on the basketball court? I guess that's the best thing that we're usually kind of decent at talking about. I
would say it doesn't. I imagine they probably, if we heard about it recently, which was like 2 weeks ago, maybe. It's probably been like over a month or more than that they've probably been broken up. So I don't know.
I don't know, dude. Those TMZ's pretty fast.
Breaking up with someone sucks, but also the part where everybody finds out is almost worse. So maybe it was when the TMZ story broke is almost worse. As far as, I don't know, maybe we should do a pre-Kendall, post-Kendall stat comparison once we have a larger sample size to see how it's affecting his game.
I'm game.
But ever since they started dating, the Suns have been very good. The first time we saw them was right before the bubble. And then the Suns go 8-0. They trade for Chris Paul. They make the NBA Finals. She's been a good luck charm.
She was a little good luck charm for sure,
Yep.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
I want to talk about rebounding. It's funny because the Suns have been, I don't know, would you categorize the Suns as a bad rebounding team? At least leading up to this season.
Yeah, leading up to this season, I kind of would. I was going to say this year, I know what the stats say.
Yeah,
so right. Not quite.
I figured you did.
But yeah, leading up to this year, I would have classified them as a below average rebounding team, not as a horrendous rebounding team, but just one where I definitely had it circled as like obvious area of concern as you approach the playoffs, as you start to play bigger and more physical teams that are going to beat up on you over the course of a 7-game series.
They're not that anymore. Isn't that kind of crazy? I feel like this is something that we didn't really talk about. I've always been sort of less concerned with rebounding because I do think there is this sort of reverse correlation between shooting and rebounding, and it's rare that you have a really great shooting team that's also a really great rebounding team. So I always prioritize, in my mind, shooting over rebounding. So as much as I would like it if the Suns don't get out-rebounded on a regular basis, I would prioritize shooting as far as, Cameron Johnson in the starting lineup, for example. But this season, the Suns are now 5th in offensive rebound percentage. Last year, they were 21st in offensive rebound percentage. And then as total rebound percentage goes, they're 9th this year. So actually in the top 10 of total rebound percentage. And rebound percentage rate, I don't like to use rebounds per game because that's pace related. Rebound percentage is sort of normalizes for pace. It's a better way to look at total rebounding, just in case anyone's wondering why I'm using that. Last year they were 13th. So they moved up from top 10. By the way, last year 13th in total rebound percentage surprised me as well, meaning they were above average last year in total rebound percentage. I was surprised when I looked that up.
It's the type of thing when you follow a contender, the little issues that you kind of magnify and blow out of proportion. You like take something that the team is average at instead of elite at, and you're like, we suck at this, but you don't actually suck at it. It's just, once you get into the playoffs, it gets harder. That's really all it is.
I do think that like obvious difference is Torrey Craig, right? That's the main thing that probably makes the difference for the Suns. But beyond that, I actually think the Suns have just been more intentional about their rebounding. Because if you look across the board, DeAndre Ayton's offensive rebounding percentage is higher. In fact, David had some great stats on that if you guys find that on his Twitter page. But Booker's is higher. Torrey Craig's is higher than last year. Mikal Bridges has a higher offensive rebounding percentage than last year. Total rebound percentage, basically all of the players are higher outside of maybe Cameron Payne, but basically all of the wings and the bigs have higher total rebound percentage across the board as well. Now, keep in mind, JaVale McGee was like the best on the Suns at that percentage, and he is gone. So I think that makes a difference. But when Cameron Johnson was in the starting lineup, Torrey Craig and Jock Lando were just getting after every single offensive rebound, fighting for those rebounds over and over and over again with intention. But I do think the Suns have put a higher emphasis specifically on offensive rebounding this year, but overall on rebounding as players, individual players, in Mikal Bridges, in Devin Booker. I think there has been more of an intention to grab those rebounds. Do you agree with that?
Yes, and I think it goes twofold. I think it's systematic in the sense of the way that they're being coached, and I think that reflects in the internal development, the numbers that you were just pointing at. But also externally, I think James Jones really made it a priority, actually, to add role players who, look, maybe at the end of the day, they're not exactly known for their offensive rebounding as like the first thing you think about. But Jock Landale, like you said, when he plays, is rebounding the hell out of the ball.
Super high effort, yeah.
Josh Okogie was brought in. He is what is he, 6'5", 6'4"? Like, he is a pretty small guy. His offensive rebounding numbers, and I know he doesn't play a ton. He plays like 10 minutes a game when he does play.
Fun minutes the past few games, though.
Fun minutes. Still can't hit a shot to save his life.
He's hit 1-3 so far this season.
But he rebounds, right? He definitely rebounds. Damian Lee, not known as a rebounder. Mostly I think of him right now as the guy who shoots 1,000% on clutch threes, but he can grab an offensive rebound and is doing a good job of it this year as well. So I think it was a focus all around.
And all of that with DeAndre Ayton's total rebound percentage, actually, it's down a tiny bit from last season. Not a massive amount. It's essentially equal to last season as far as total rebound percentage. So, the Suns being a great rebounding team, well, DeAndre Ayton, by the numbers, has technically gotten a little worse, I think is kind of something that I didn't really anticipate being the case. And I think the offensive rebounding wise, it's nice for the Suns to find ways to get, specifically without Chris Paul, it's nice for the Suns to find ways to get extra possessions. Because the thing about Chris Paul, and we'll talk about the Suns winning without Chris Paul in just a second, but the thing about Chris Paul is when you have an offensive possession with Chris Paul, there's a good chance you're like maximizing the outcome of that possession because Chris Paul is a psychopath that sort of just analyzes everything and tries to maximize based on the way the defense is playing you. Without Chris Paul, the Suns have still done a good job, but they're not going to be able to do it in the same way. So for them the possession battle in their way was maximizing every possession. But the possession battle without him will be, maybe we need a few more to continue to win games. So to be able to find extra possessions in the offensive rebounding and just overall, has there been a game this season where it just feels like, wow, the Suns can't grab a single rebound? I don't feel like there really has been. Maybe Orlando? Was that?
Yeah, not one that
I feel like they out-rebounded Orlando.
Not one that comes to the top of my head. There probably have been, though.
We haven't played Toronto yet, right? So we'll see what happens against Toronto.
Well, who's even number one in the stat this season?
I think it was like Detroit. Weirdly.
Is it who we'd expect?
I think it's Detroit. Let me bring it up. But yeah, it's a great question because it's just a nice thing for the Suns. It's nice to not have to complain about that.
Offensive, this is not the exact stat, but for offensive rebounding percentage. Wait, were you looking at total rebounding percentage or offensive?
Both.
First of all. Okay.
Yeah.
For offensive rebounding
where we got killed was offensive rebounding percentage, so that's a good one to look at.
Yeah, where the Suns are fifth. The Raptors are second, so when we play them, that's obvious. Yeah. The Rockets are first, which I guess kind of makes sense because they have,
right.
They
I
have
knew
a
it was
lot of
a
length.
Tanking team. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also
they
kind
play
of
big wings.
It kind of just shows your point, though, right? Of like, well, if we can't shoot and we throw up 1,000 bricks,
the Raptors
we have to collect some of them, right?
And even the Suns with Torrey Craig in the starting lineup, you're sacrificing shooting, so he has to do something else. It's Rockets, for the record, I have it up too. Rockets, Raptors, Grizzlies, Jazz, and then the Suns are in the top five. And you go beyond that, the Hornets, the Knicks, the Bucks, the Pistons, and the Pacers. If we're really saying good teams for sure, you could say the Suns, you can say the Bucks for sure. in that, it's not always a good, it doesn't always correlate to teams being great. Shooting matters more. But yeah, that's still a stat where the Suns have struggled a lot in the past, and they're looking really good in that stat so far. I think it's going to be interesting to see, because Cameron Johnson's the worst rebounder of of the forwards for sure. And when he steps into the starting lineup, they're going to feel it a little bit with Torrey Craig out, because Torrey Craig, he's just really, that's probably his best skill, right? Rebounding?
Absolutely. Of course it is. But, also when Cam Johnson steps into the starting lineup, we know there's going to be like a plus 30 net rating swing. Because
it's what it is. That's just what it is.
It's exactly what you're saying, man. Shooting, I'm going to take shooting over rebounding if I can only choose between the two any day of the week. You still need to be solid. And really, your 5 needs to hold it down, which is why going back to Ayton one more time in this episode, it's so critical that he's been the guy who's really kind of held it down.
It's more. I would say it's more important than ever for the 5 to be a great rebounder because of the way 4s stretch the floor.
Although you want to know technically who's leading the Suns in offensive rebounds per 36 this season?
Is it like Dario Saric?
It is Dario Saric. Congratulations.
I think I saw that earlier because I was looking at that and I was like, oh, I'm not even going to bring that up.
Dario Saric with his natural physical gifts, his advantages.
Well, he's playing the 4. Yeah. I mean, that's
he towers over them.
If he's got one thing at the 4, it's that he's usually taller than whoever else is on him. And even in that case, I don't know, he's not that tall. By the way, I'm looking at, since I have this page up, I'm looking at the net ratings, and this is something that you and I wanted to talk about. The Suns still have the second best net rating in the NBA, and second only to the Boston Celtics. By the way, the Boston Celtics, other than Danilo Gallinari, have been pretty healthy, and they're still pretty much neck and neck with the Suns. Cleveland Cavaliers now just below the Suns. Cavaliers kind of held it down above the Suns for a while there, but now they're not. And those, I think you'll recognize those two teams that are in the closest contention with the Suns when it comes to net rating here. Eastern Conference teams, which has been kind of interesting. So this is something that you and I wanted to talk about, and we'll start by saying this. The Suns are number 1 in the Western Conference at the moment of recording this. They're number 1 in the Western Conference.
Wild.
Without, Cameron Johnson's missed games, Chris Paul's missed games, Jay Crowder, his roster spot, his salary is literally nothing. He's missed all 19 games the Suns have played so far. He's brought nothing to the team. I mean, that's what it is.
It's facts. It is an objective fact. He's brought nothing.
Yeah. So it is kind of interesting to think because the Suns 13-6. That's a good record. 11-1 at home. They've played 12 home games. I think that's an important point to bring up when it comes to that in particular. But I think that you and I both are sort of surprised in that the way the Suns are playing, they're still the number 1 overall seed. It's not a record that you would think would be the number 1. The Boston Celtics, number 1 in the East, 16-4. That's a little better when it comes to that. Seems more like it. And I think just in general, when I was thinking about this conversation, it just feels like the West is kind of underperforming. Or how would you describe what's happening here?
Yeah, we're mid. The Western Conference.
Is it just more parity, though? Is it really that they're bad, or is it more parity?
It is, which is awesome. And I think this is the crisis that everyone around the league is having right now, whether you cover the league nationally or whether you're a single team schmuck like us. We're all struggling with this idea of how do you sell parity? Because this is awesome. We haven't experienced parity like this in the NBA probably in the Western Conference my entire life, Mike. It's never been like this.
Yeah, right.
It's never been like this. But these dynasties, these teams that go out there and they win 65, 70 games, those dynasties, and then win championships, obviously not fizzle out in the second round like the Suns did last year. Those teams sell, and they get really, really good ratings. And so I think, the NBA is struggling a little bit. But if you're a true fan of basketball, parity is a great thing. It's just, here are the top 4 teams in the West by net rating right now. It's the Phoenix Suns at +7, the New Orleans Pelicans at +5.5, who I still think, at full strength. Watch out. That team's going to be great.
They just got beat by like 40 points a few days ago.
Tonight? Oh, a few days ago. Yeah.
And that net rating was probably a lot higher before that.
Probably, but it's still there. It's still good. Plus 5.5, still very good.
Number
three by net rating in the Western Conference, the 500 Dallas Mavericks,
who are the 11th seed right now.
The 11th seed, and they're a plus 2.5, and that makes them the third best team in the Western Conference by net rating. And the fourth best team in the Western Conference is the team we're playing tomorrow night. Join us on Playback, the Sacramento Kings at plus 1.9. And then
the Jazz are there right above them, right?
I'm using the basketball reference version.
That's right.
Might be slightly.
They're basically equal. The Jazz and the Kings right now.
The Jazz and the Kings are 4 and 5.
Yeah.
And then you get into the teams like the Grizzlies and the Nuggets and whatever that are
Nuggets
basically
number 2. By the way, the Nuggets are currently number 2.
They're a fake 2 seed
in the Western Conference with a 0.9 net rating. They're basically playing by like a team that's just over 500. A 43 win team or whatever, and they're still currently the number 2 seed. Now that I think that is bolstered by the fact that they played a lot of bad teams early in the season, and the schedule for them is going to get a lot more difficult. But they are 12-7, right under the Suns right now. And by the way, 6-4 in their last 10, which is exactly what the Suns are. The only teams that are better than 6-4 in the last 10, because you talk about 6-4 in the last 10, that's what the Suns are, and they're the number 1 seed. It's kind of crazy to think about. The Kings were 7-3 in their last 10. The Warriors also finally getting a little hot, 7-3 in their last 10. And you think about teams like the Lakers celebrating their most recent stretch. By the way, they're the 13th seed.
Garbage, yeah.
5-5.
They're cooked.
That's what they're celebrating.
They're done.
This is where we're at with who they are.
Yeah, the Lakers were never a serious threat, though. I think,
But they're still underperforming at the very least at the expectations of their fans, which I guess are always just a little bit out of control.
To drive the point home, the Suns are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference right now. As of today, maybe it gets better when they get healthier and make a trade. I don't know. But as of today, they are on a 56-win pace. 56 wins. That's still good.
Well, I did say before the season when we were talking about the over-unders, I said
what was our over-under again?
Was it like 54 and a half maybe? And I remember I said, I feel like the Suns could go under and still win the conference. And then we had this long discussion about how that never happens, which was true. And we looked up the last time it happened. It was one of the Spurs years in like 2012 or something like that.
Well, I looked it up.
Random year. What happened?
I looked it up exactly again. Can you tell me the last time? I'll give you a chance. The last time a number 1 seed in the Western Conference won 56 games or less.
56 games or less. I'm
56.
guessing.
That's not very many.
Is it 13, 14?
No.
Are you looking just the Western Conference, by the way?
Just the Western Conference.
Okay, that helps me out a
the
little
East
bit.
tends to be a little weaker. Might be.
Yeah.
Different.
Is it before that or after that?
It's before that,
isn't it? Okay. Is it the Spurs?
No.
Okay, then I have no idea. I really have no idea.
The last time a number 1 seed in the Western Conference won 56 games or less, the 1984 Los Angeles Lakers, who went 54-28. They lost to Larry Bird's Celtics in 7 games in the NBA Finals at a time when the NBA had like 20 teams. The Western Conference, I guess more than that, because the Western Conference had 12 teams at the time, so the NBA must have been 24 teams. That is the last time. That was almost 40 years ago that the Western Conference had a number 1 seed that was just by win percentage, just by wins, technically this week. Now, there have been some years that have come close, however. Perhaps the most recent being just a few years ago, the Western Conference in 2019, the Warriors won 57 games. They were the 1 seed. That was the year they lost to Toronto in the finals. But they only won 57 games, obviously because, A, they were dealing with some injuries, despite the fact that they had the universe's greatest super team. But also they just didn't care about the regular season, because why would they? And then all other playoff teams in the Western Conference that year won between 48 and 54 games. Remember, that was also the year where like the Blazers made the Western Conference Finals and got swept. It was just like, it was the Warriors were an inevitability. But there were some other technically interesting teams in the Western Conference to track. This year's Western Conference maybe feels a little bit like that one as well, except for the Warriors' inevitability part, because really there is no team that it's just like is a super team where everyone's like, yeah, that's the team that's going to the finals. We're just waiting for them to kick it into gear.
I just want to talk about what you think might change by the end of the season here, because I do think it's interesting. The Suns are number one. When, guys get back and healthy. Chris Paul's out the next game. We know that, but we're on a game-to-game basis with Chris Paul, where they clearly know he's not going to be back on a game-to-game basis, but they're not letting us know he's out until the day before the game.
Assholes, dude. Thank God Campaign is actually playing well.
But we know Cameron Johnson is going to come back eventually, and we'll see how he plays. I mean, there is reason to be optimistic about how he plays. By the way, I'm going to quickly mention this since we had a conversation about it on the podcast. Cameron Johnson said he got the snip, if you will, on his meniscus based on the doctor's recommendations of how he would recover afterwards. So him saying it was not necessarily a decision based on his ability to return faster, it was more of a recommendation by the doctor, which I think in some respects sounds like good news. I'm sure there might be something I'm missing within that as far as what that means beyond that, but it sounds like good news. So we'll see how he ends up coming back from that. So we'll say the Suns, I think they're probably going to be, based on if they start to get healthier, in contention for the number one seed. I don't expect, just based on the way other people have played, I'm not really expecting them to drop too far from that. Maybe top three. I think they're going to have home court advantage. What do you think?
It's hard to say because one losing streak and suddenly you're the 8th seed. I just said the Mavs are one of the best teams by net rating, and they're what did you say? They're 10th?
They're 11th. They're out of the play-in right now.
Yeah, dude. So, I mean, I don't want to
But the net rating points to the Suns being really great.
It does.
It does. It
does.
It's not a net rating thing for the Suns where you're looking at them, like the Nuggets, for example, where you're looking at them where they are and saying, I don't think they're going to stay there. The net rating for the Suns put them at second in the NBA, second only to Boston.
We need to continue to trust them as a team that can close out close games and win clutch games. And especially once Chris Paul comes back, I think they can do that. I think they've been doing well enough so far this year, regardless.
If Chris Paul comes back, Cameron Payne keeps playing as well as he has, that's a really nice look for the Suns as far as starters and bench, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
I guess.
So the Nuggets at number 2, though, are we anticipating them? I think they could actually be the number 2 seed when it's all said and done.
Wait until Jamal Murray comes back, dude. They could be number 1.
Somebody was still mad in my mentions about that, by the way.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. It's too tempting.
They're 12-7, like we mentioned earlier. When you look at their overall net rating, they're 13th in the NBA. They're barely positive in the net rating. A few teams down is the Clippers, who are now a negative net rating. I don't know, but I still think when I look at the rest of these teams, I don't know, maybe the Nuggets are going to be up there. Do you think that's going to flip, or what do you think?
Yeah, they could totally be up there.
And then
they're not a team that I would bet on to, be in the play-in for sure. I don't know if they'll be second.
Let's talk about these next 4 as a group here. Grizzlies, Pelicans, Clippers, and Kings. Now, Grizzlies, I think they just seem to win. They're 12-8 currently. Pelicans, 11-8. Pelicans are the one team that you can point at in this group and say they're maybe underperforming their overall net rating. Then you got the Clippers, who are clearly not what anyone expected them to be so far this season. And then the Kings, who in the same way are not what you expected them to be, but maybe in a better way, at 10-8, who are... they have a winning record right now, which, a lot of teams do. 9 teams in the West have a winning record, but the Kings are one of them. I don't know. I think if I had to pick a team to drop out of this, history says you should probably pick the Kings, right?
Everyone will say the Kings, but I am rooting for the Kings. But just by the way, I'm excited for that matchup, though. Apparently De'Aaron Fox is good again. I guess everyone gave up on him last year, and now he's good again.
Yeah.
Obviously they've got Sabonis. Malik Monk is a guy who's been killing it this season for them. Yeah. He's always a guy where it just felt like obvious to me that more teams should be interested in.
Barnes is getting better.
In a player like him. Yeah, Barnes, I still don't understand that thing you said a couple weeks ago about apparently he's untouchable, but he has been playing better.
If a coach likes you, it goes a long ways.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I'm rooting for the Kings. I really hope we do. I hope they break the streak this year.
I honestly kind of feel like the Clippers might drop a little bit.
Yeah, they might.
Then you have the Portland Trailblazers next at 7, and this is without Damian Lillard. They've played quite a few games without Damian Lillard. If he comes back healthy, the Blazers could start playing better. and actually jump a few teams in the standings if Lillard comes back.
It's a tragic story with the Clippers. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I feel too bad for them or their fan base after some of the battles we've had, but it is a tragic story in the sense that here's an organization that I really think just did a phenomenal job over the past 18 months of acquiring as much depth as possible and getting these role players who know their roles and are totally 100% capable of fulfilling them. But the idea of the Clippers as a championship contending team was always contingent on eventually Kawhi Leonard had to come back and he had to be that guy. He had to still be a top 10 player in the NBA. And they're going to go as far as he takes them. So far, that has not been very far.
The way that Zach Lowe said it, I thought was kind of interesting. You know, the Clippers do have a lot of role players, but the Suns have a lot of players that would be their third best player. You know, when it comes to role players. And there is a difference in between what a role player can be. Like, there's a difference between Mikal Bridges, who everyone assumes as a role player, and any of the role players on the Clippers,
and like a Terrence Mann or someone who's just not
Robert Covington,
not flexible or versatile
or Nicholas
to the same
Batum.
degree.
Yeah, you know, there's varying degrees of role players, and they have a lot of role players that are pretty good, but they're not great. And I think they're also older, and I think that is something that's affecting them a little bit. You know, I could see them dropping. I could see the Grizzlies dropping a little bit, but I am not confident in the Grizzlies in that I just haven't watched them that much this season. So I'm not sure if that record reflects what they actually are or not. And then you have the Jazz. The Jazz are 3-7 in their last 10. Is it finally starting with the Jazz? Are they finally free falling? Mike Conley's been out a little bit, so that affects them a little bit.
Mike Conley actually has been great this year. Look, I think the cracks are showing with that team, but I could still see them. I mean, we may have just seen a preview. They're the 8th seed right now of our first round matchup. Totally feasible that could happen. And if it does, watch out, because it has only been close 1-point battles between the Suns and the Jazz for the past year.
I
now,
like
so
them. I like how they're coached. I think they're a fascinating team. And then the Warriors 7-3 in their last 10.
They're going to come back.
You know what they did? They kicked Wiseman to the curb, and they're playing so much better. He was getting killed. He's getting killed in the G League. He's not good. He's not a good player. They really messed up. They tanked a whole season to pick a bad player who played not at all. And it's one of the most bizarre decisions that we've seen a team with the generally good front office make. You know, Kuminga at least is getting minutes in this stretch. You know, Wiseman has just been bad. He's bad. He's not good. And lastly, we'll talk about these two. The 10th and the 11th are Minnesota and Dallas. Minnesota's not going to make the play-in, right? Are we at the point where... Are we more confident that the Jazz will make the play-in than the Minnesota Timberwolves?
It almost pains me to say it, but if there's any team that you wanted me to short their stock right now and just bet against from now till the end of the season, it's probably Minnesota. I don't know if they're going to figure it out, man.
5-5 in their last 10.
I have not been. Yeah, I mean they have good nights individually, but I have not been remotely impressed on the particular games that I check in on them. Compared to a team like Golden State, where it just feels like, as you were just talking about, smartly managed, has a really bad bench, but feels like they could just make one or two minor moves at the deadline to fix up their bench a little bit, and then they'll shoot right back up the standings. Minnesota's the opposite problem. Their starters are getting fucking killed.
Yeah.
Who is it that they just played? Didn't they just lose today to someone? And
they did, and they looked bad.
They just, actually, speak of the devil, they just lost to Golden State by 23 today, and all of their starters were like a minus 30. And just, they...
that's the worst matchup for them. And it's funny to think about...
Vibes are not good in Minnesota.
With guys like Gobert and Jokic to some extent, like big lumbering guys who are trying to play defense, they specifically Gobert, they kind of kill bad teams with the way that they play defense. And then you talk about the matchup against a team like the Warriors, that's really bad for the Timberwolves. And to some extent, the Suns too, when they're fully healthy with all the guards that can attack with speed or just being smart, like Chris Paul. And those are the kinds of teams that they're going to play in the playoffs. Like it might be the Memphis Grizzlies. It might be the Sacramento Kings. It might be the Portland Trail Blazers if the Minnesota Timberwolves even make it there. And even on the other side of that, Denver Nuggets as well could be playing one of those teams in the first round. And it's just going to be interesting to see how they adjust defensively, because I just don't see how the Minnesota Timberwolves are built to play against a lot of these Western Conference teams. And what are they going to do? Like, what do they do if they end the year as the 11th seed and they traded 5 picks for a player where it's clearly not working out? That's going to be a fascinating story.
Possibly a regime change yeah, I mean, it's going to be ugly. As we start to wrap up here, though, bring it back to the Suns real quick. I just want to say, unless you have any other teams you wanted to cover.
No.
Quickly.
I mean, I don't really want to talk about the Lakers. They're there, though.
They suck.
The Mavericks, too. The Mavericks will probably go up in the standings, I think.
Yeah, the Mavs are to be respected. That doesn't mean Luka should get MVP. We'll get to that conversation at another point. Look, as this all relates to the Suns, I guess here's my final thoughts on it, and then you can tell me if you feel the same or differently. But we've established, I think, in this kind of mini conversation that there is no team that's just owning the West right now. There is no big bad to be entirely fearful of. That absolutely does not mean that now is the time to get cocky. You know? Like that just because the Suns have been able to manage these situations so far, that they should cut their losses on Jay Crowder as soon as possible for a 60% return. Right. And then just, that's your roster for the rest of the year. And then we're good, boys. Let's ride into the playoffs. Now is the time, if you ask me, now is the time to strike. And, but by now, I mean...
Or soon.
Soon
by is the time to strike.
Soon is the time to strike.
That famous phrase, yeah.
By February 15th, or whenever the trade deadline is. Not right now. I think they could manage for a few more weeks or whatever. But you still got to make a trade this year. We still see the weaknesses on this current team.
It'd be one thing
and we still need to be in a better position, I think, to truly be that team that just dominates the rest of the conference.
If the Suns are playing like they were last year, and the Western Conference look like it does right now, I'd feel pretty good. But they're not, and they're not fully healthy, and they don't have the same kind of depth, and the West is still not great. So it's just a different, there are going to be teams. This is going to be an interesting trade deadline in general now that you bring it up, because how wide open it feels right now. And the Suns want to be the ones on the right end of that. And if they can play well without players that could actually work in a trade, then that puts them in a pretty good position.
I'm disappointed. Like, I was promised a Wemby tank race. Yeah. And the problem with the trade deadline right now is
the Spurs and the Rockets are they're involved in that.
That's great. They definitely are. But like 13 of these teams still think they're in it. And that's kind of, as we've talked about in the past, that's the issue with the play-in in general. But hopefully some of these teams start nosediving, because we need them to give up already and sell off their decent players to us.
The Mavericks only have one more win than the Oklahoma City Thunder right now. Are they going to keep letting SGA play on that team and keep them out of the race? Or maybe it doesn't matter, right? Maybe the Lakers pass the Thunder and they're still in the bottom three in the West. But, I think you're right. It's going to be interesting to see. Maybe the Thunder trade Kenrich or Lou Dort instead of SGA, and the Suns can get in on one of those guys instead to try to slyly tank without getting rid of one of their best players or their best player. That'll be an interesting thing to keep track of. One of the teams that won 7-3 in their last 10, the Sacramento Kings, they're playing the Suns on Monday. If you're listening to this on Monday, join us on Playback, because we're going to do that game. We're testing the curse in two ways, right? Does it exist, which it feels like it does, and two, is it only a Friday curse? That's the other thing we're testing on this one, because this is a Monday night game against the Kings, who have been playing well. I think the Suns have to take that matchup really seriously. If they can win,
third game in 4 nights as well, so not going to be easy.
If they can win against the Kings on Monday, they have the Bulls on Wednesday, they have the Rockets on Friday. It could be an interesting week for the Suns, who have already won 4 in a row. The Kings, I think, are the biggest challenge in this week, and it's going to be fun to watch that one with you guys. So join us on Playback, and outside of that, if you'd like to join us on Patreon, we have a Discord. We do extra podcasts every week, patreon.com/thetimeline. If you want to join us on that Playback, we'll post the link, but it is playback.tv/thetimeline. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Sam, you got anything else before we go?
That's all. See you guys hopefully tomorrow for a win against the Kings.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.